When Liam Carter found those letters in the schoolmarm's purse, he discovered his dead son had been writing to a woman who didn't exist, or so he thought. The autumn wind carried more than dust across the Carter ranch that October morning in 1885. It carried secrets, whispers of the past, and the scent of coming rain that would either bless the dying crops or wash away what little hope remained. Liam Carter stood on his weathered porch, coffee growing cold in his calloused hands, watching a figure stumble through his gate like a ghost made flesh. Even from a distance, he could see she was in trouble, dress torn and mud-stained, bonnet askew, one hand pressed against her ribs like she was holding herself together with nothing but will and determination. The morning sun caught the copper threads in her hair, and something about the way she moved, careful, deliberate, as if each step cost her dearly, made his chest tighten in a way it hadn't since Martha passed 3 years ago. "Easy there, miss." His boots hit the porch steps. 2 at a time, the familiar creak of old wood announcing his approach. The woman looked up, and those green eyes, Lord Almighty, those eyes, made time stutter like a broken clock. She was young, maybe 25 to his 38, with auburn hair escaping its pins and wild tendrils and freckles scattered across. Her nose like fallen stars. Pretty, in that wholesome way that made a man think of Sunday dinners and children's laughter echoing through empty halls. But there was steel beneath that delicate surface, something that spoke of strength forged in fires he couldn't yet imagine. "I'm sorry to impose," she gasped, swaying on her feet like a sapling in a storm. "My wagon broke down about 5 miles back. I've been walking since dawn." Liam caught her elbow as she stumbled, feeling the fever heat radiating through the thin cotton sleeve. Her skin burned like desert stones at midday. "You're burning up. Come inside before you collapse in my yard." "I couldn't possibly impose on your kindness, ma'am. I've got a 10-year-old daughter who'd tan my hide proper if I left a lady standing in the yard like some common drifter." He guided her toward the house, noting how she favored her left side and the way her breath caught with each step. "Name's Liam Carter. This here's my spread, such as it is. Ava Morgan." She managed a weak smile that transformed her entire face, chasing away the shadows for just a moment. "I'm the new schoolteacher for Dusty Creek. Or rather, I was supposed to be." Something cold settled in Liam's stomach like a stone dropped in still water. Dusty Creek was 20 miles north through some of the roughest country in Texas territory, where decent folks didn't venture alone, especially not women traveling without protection. That's a fair piece for a woman traveling solo. "I had traveling companions when I started the journey." Her voice carried shadows deeper than twilight. "Things didn't work out as planned. Some men aren't what they appear to be." The implication hung between them like smoke. Liam's jaw tightened, familiar rage stirring in his chest, the same anger that had burned there since Martha's death, since Noah's fever, since Harper had stopped smiling. Too many good people suffered while the wicked prospered. Inside the modest ranch house, Liam settled her into Martha's old rocking chair by the stone fireplace. The irony wasn't lost on him. Another woman seeking shelter in the space his wife had once filled with warmth and laughter. But where Martha had been sturdy as an oak, built for frontier life, this Ava Morgan seemed fragile as morning frost, like she might disappear if he looked away too long. "Let me tend that fever," he said, moving toward the kitchen where Martha's herbs still hung in neat bundles from the rafters. "Then we'll see about getting you safely to town. Mr. Carter." Her voice stopped him at the doorway, soft but carrying an odd urgency. "Thank you. I know harboring strangers isn't wise in these parts. Not with the stories I've heard." He studied her face, noting the careful way she held herself, the nervous flutter of her hands against her skirts, the way her eyes darted to the windows as if expecting pursuit. Everyone had secrets out here in the territories. His own sat heavy in his chest, the son he'd lost to fever 2 winters back, the daughter who barely spoke since her twin brother died, the ranch slowly failing without enough hands to work it properly. "Sometimes kindness is all that stands between us and the wolves," he said simply, though the words carried more weight than he intended. While Ava rested, Liam heated water over the fire and gathered clean cloths from Martha's old medicine chest. Through the kitchen window, he watched his daughter Harper emerge from the barn, her dark hair braided severely against her skull, her 10-year-old face set in the grim lines that had become her permanent expression since losing Noah she'd been. Laughing that morning, Noah took sick. They both had, chasing chickens around the yard like regular children, their voices bright as silver bells. By evening, Noah was burning with fever that no amount of cool cloths could break. By the next morning, he was gone, and Harper had retreated, so deep inside herself that sometimes Liam wondered if he'd lost both his children that terrible day. Papa. Harper appeared in the doorway like a small, serious ghost, her sharp eyes fixed on Ava with the intensity of a hawk studying prey. "Who's that woman?" "Miss Morgan. She's the new teacher heading to Dusty Creek." He watched his daughter's face for any flicker of interest, any crack in the armor she'd built around her heart. Harper had loved school before everything changed. "She looks sick." Harper's voice carried no sympathy, just cold observation. "Might be catching. That's why we're helping her get well." Liam knelt to his daughter's level, meeting those eyes that looked too old for her face. "Think you could help me tend to her? Like your mama used to do for folks who needed healing?" For a moment, something flickered in Harper's eyes. A ghost of the compassionate girl she'd once been, the child who'd bandaged wounded birds and sung lullabies to sick calves. Then the walls slammed back up like shutters in a storm. "I'll be in the barn with the horses. They don't lie to you." When Liam returned to the sitting room with medical supplies, he found Ava asleep in the chair, her breathing shallow but steady. Her purse was clutched tight against her chest, even in slumber, as if protecting something precious beyond measure. The leather satchel was old but well kept, with delicate brass clasps that caught the firelight and threw dancing shadows on the wall. He set the supplies down on the side table. The purse slipped from her loosened grip, spilling its contents across the wooden floor in a cascade of personal belongings. Bills, coins, a small leather-bound Bible, a pressed wildflower between glass and letters. 3 of them, tied with faded blue ribbon. Liam's blood turned to ice water in his veins. The handwriting on the top envelope was achingly, impossibly familiar. Noah's careful script, the letters slightly slanted the way he'd been practicing in his copybook before the fever took him. But that was impossible. Noah had been in the ground for 2 years, with trembling fingers that had once been steady enough to thread a needle or aim a rifle. Liam picked up the letter. The address read in Noah's unmistakable hand: Miss Ava Morgan, care of Dusty Creek School, Texas Territory. The postmark was from last month. His mind reeled like a Mustang fighting a rope. Noah was dead. He'd buried his son with his own hands, had carved the headstone himself, had grieved for 2 years while watching Harper retreat into silence. So how in God's name were there letters in Noah's handwriting addressed to this woman who'd stumbled into his life like an answered prayer or a beautiful curse? Ava stirred in the chair, her eyes fluttering open like butterfly wings. When she saw him holding the letters, her face went white as bone china, and her hand flew to her throat. "Mr. Carter," she whispered, and her voice carried a tremor that had nothing to do with fever. "I can explain everything." The letters felt heavier than lead in Liam's hands, each one a contradiction that threatened to shatter his understanding of the world. He'd watched his son die, had felt Noah's fevered hand grow cold in his own, had spoken words over a grave that still haunted his dreams. Yet here was proof, impossible, undeniable proof, that somehow, somewhere, Noah had been writing to this woman. "Explain what exactly?" His voice came out rougher than intended, like gravel scraped across stone. "How my dead son's been writing letters to a woman I've never met." Ava struggled to sit straighter in the chair, her green eyes never leaving his face. The fever flush on her cheeks made her look younger, more vulnerable, but there was something ancient in her gaze, a weariness that spoke of carrying secrets too heavy for her slight frame. "He's not dead, Mr. Carter." The words fell between them like stones into still water. "Noah is very much alive." The world tilted sideways. Liam's knees nearly buckled as the meaning of her words crashed over him like a flash flood. "That's impossible. I buried him myself. I carved his name in stone." "You buried someone," Ava said gently, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "But it wasn't your son." The coffee cup slipped from Liam's fingers, shattering against the wooden floor in a spray of porcelain and cold liquid. Neither of them moved to clean it up. Harper's footsteps echoed from the porch, then faded toward the barn, leaving them alone with the impossible truth hanging in the air like smoke. Tell me. The words scraped from his throat. Tell me everything. Ava closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength or perhaps courage. 2 years ago, I was teaching at a small school in Kansas. One of my students was a boy named Timothy Walsh, sickly child, always coughing, parents who worked him harder than any 10-year-old should be worked. Her voice took on the rhythm of confession, each word carefully chosen. The night he died of fever, another boy came to my window. Said his name was Noah Carter, that he'd run away from men who'd stolen him from his family. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs like a caged bird. Stolen. He was thin as a rail, covered in bruises, spoke of terrible things done to him by men who'd claimed to be taking him to relatives after his family died in an influenza outbreak. Ava's hands twisted in her lap. But he'd escaped, you see. Walked. For days through the wilderness, following stars and railroad tracks, determined to find his way home to Texas. The room spun around Liam like a child's top. But the boy who died, Timothy Walsh, was about Noah's age, with similar coloring. When the doctor came, he took one look at the fever-ravaged face and accepted my word that it was Noah Carter, the runaway I'd taken in. Ava's voice dropped to a whisper. I let him believe it because Noah begged me to. Said he was afraid the men who'd taken him would come looking if they knew he was still alive. So you kept him. It wasn't a question. I kept him safe. There was steel in her voice now, the same strength he'd glimpsed earlier. Changed his name to Timothy Walsh, moved us both to a new town where nobody would ask questions. Gave him a chance at the childhood that had been stolen from him. Liam sank into the chair across from her, his legs suddenly unable to support his weight. 2 years. His son had been alive for 2 years while he'd grieved, while Harper had retreated into herself, while he'd carved a headstone and spoken prayers over an empty grave. Why didn't you bring him home? The question came out harsher than he intended, edged with 2 years of anguish. Why didn't you find me? I tried. Ava leaned forward, urgency bleeding into her voice. But Noah was terrified. Said the men who'd taken him claimed his father was dead, that there was nothing left for him in Texas but wolves and graves. It took me months to convince him to even tell me his real name, longer still to get him to speak about his family. Through the window, Liam could see Harper leading one of the horses to water, her movements precise and controlled. She'd grown up so much in the past 2 years, forced to become an adult while still a child. How would she react to learning her twin was alive? Would it heal her or break her further? The letters, he said, gesturing to the ribboned bundle. When did he start writing them? 6 months ago. Said he dreamed about a sister with dark hair who looked just like him, about a father with kind eyes and gentle hands. Ava's smile was soft, tinged with sadness. He wanted so desperately to come home, but he was afraid you wouldn't want him back. Afraid too much time had passed. Not want him back. The words exploded from Liam's chest. He's my son, my boy. I'd have ridden through hell itself to bring him home. I know that now. Ava reached for the letters, her fingers brushing his as she took them. That's why I was coming to Dusty Creek. Noah heard there was a school there needing a teacher. Thought maybe if I took the position, I could find you. See what kind of man you were, whether it was safe for him to come home. Where is he now? Liam's voice cracked on the question that mattered most. With the Reverend and his wife in Millfield, about 60 miles north of here. They think he's my nephew, that I'm seeking employment to support us both. She untied the ribbon with shaking fingers, pulling out the top letter. He writes to me every week, asking about you, about whether I've found his family yet. She handed him the letter, and Liam's hands trembled as he unfolded the familiar paper. Noah's careful script filled the page, every word a miracle he'd never thought to see again. Dear Miss Ava, I dreamed about Papa again last night. He was standing on the porch of our house, looking down the road like he was waiting for someone. In the dream, I wanted to run to him, but my feet wouldn't move. Do you think he's forgotten me? It's been so long, and I'm not the same boy who left. The things those men did. What if Papa can't love who I've become? I think about Harper every day. Wonder if she still braids her hair the way Mama taught her. If she still talks to the horses like they understand every word. We used to have our own language, Harper and me. Twin talk, Papa called it. I wonder if she's forgotten our words. Please find them soon, Miss Ava. I'm ready to come home, even if home doesn't want me back. Your devoted student, Noah Carter, who used to be Timothy Walsh, tears blurred Liam's vision, each word a knife and a blessing combined. His son, alive, grown, changed by horrors Liam couldn't imagine, but still yearning for home, still wanting his family. The men who took him, Liam said, his voice deadly quiet. Are they still a threat? Ava's face went pale. I don't know. That's part of why I was traveling with escorts. Word might have gotten out about where we were. Who Noah really was. She touched her ribs where she'd been favoring them. My traveling companions turned out to be less trustworthy than I'd hoped. Outside, Harper's voice drifted through the window as she spoke softly to the horses, the same gentle tone she'd once used with Noah, the same tone that had gone silent the day they'd buried an empty grave. Miss Ava, Liam said, his decision crystallizing like frost on glass. How fast can you ride? Ava's eyes widened at Liam's question, and she gripped the arms of Martha's old rocking chair. I can ride well enough, but Mr. Carter, in my condition, your condition won't improve by sitting here while my son thinks his family's forgotten him. Liam was already moving, his mind racing through possibilities like a Mustang braking. Free. How many days has it been since you left Millfield? 3. She struggled to stand, swaying slightly. But the men who were escorting me, they might have gone back there when they realized I'd escaped. If they're working for the same people who took Noah originally, then we'd best get there first. Liam strode to the gun cabinet, pulling out his Winchester and checking the ammunition. The familiar weight of the rifle in his hands steadied him, gave him something solid to hold on to while his world reformed around this impossible hope. Can you shoot? Well enough to hit what I'm aiming at. Something in her tone made him look up sharply. There was steel beneath that fever-flushed exterior, the kind forged in situations no schoolteacher should ever face. Good. You'll need to. The front door creaked open, and Harper appeared in the doorway like a small storm cloud, her dark eyes taking in the scattered letters, the gun in her father's hands, the tension crackling between the adults like lightning. Before thunder. Papa. Her voice was carefully controlled, but Liam caught the tremor underneath. What's happening? Liam knelt before his daughter, the Winchester balanced across his knees. How did you tell a 10-year-old that her twin brother, the other half of her soul, had been alive all this time? How did you explain 2 years of unnecessary grief? Harper, I need you to listen carefully. He reached for her hands, surprised when she didn't pull away. You remember Noah? Remember how you always said you could feel him, even after we thought he was gone? Her face went white as fresh snow. Papa, don't. You were right, little bird. You were right all along. The words came out rough with emotion. Noah's alive. Miss Ava here has been taking care of him. Harper's gaze snapped to Ava with the intensity of a hawk spotting prey. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind rattling the windows and the distant lowing of cattle. Then Harper's carefully constructed walls began to crack. You're lying. The words were barely a whisper. He's dead. I felt him die. I felt the cold creep into my bones the night the fever took him. That was another boy, sweetheart. A sick child who needed burying, but it wasn't Noah. Liam pulled one of the letters from the pile, holding it where Harper could see the familiar handwriting. Look at the script. You know his hand better than anyone. Harper stared at the letter like it might bite her, then slowly reached out with trembling fingers. Her lips moved silently as she read, and Liam watched 2 years of grief war with desperate hope across her young face. He asks about me, she whispered, tears starting to track down her cheeks. He remembers our language. Of course he remembers. Twins don't forget each other, even when the world tries to tear them apart. Harper looked up at Ava, and for the first time since Noah's supposed death, Liam saw his daughter's face crack open with something besides pain. Where is he? Can we go to him now? That's the plan, Liam said, rising and moving toward the stairs. But it's dangerous, Harper. The men who took Noah might still be looking for him. I need you to stay here with Mrs. Patterson. No. The word cracked through the air like a gunshot. Harper straightened to her full height, all 10 years of her suddenly looking ancient and immovable. He's my twin. My other half. I'm not staying behind. Harper, Papa, I've been dying inside for 2 years. Every morning I wake up and remember he's gone, and every night I dream about him calling for me. Her voice broke, but her spine remained straight. If there's a chance he's alive, if there's a chance I can see him again, I'm taking it. Ava spoke up from the chair, her voice gentle but firm. She should come, Mr. Carter. Noah talks about Harper constantly. If he sees her, if he knows his family really wants him back, it's 60 miles through rough country with armed men potentially hunting us. Liam's protective instincts warred with the desperate need in his daughter's eyes. If something happens to you, then we'll be together. Harper's chin lifted with stubborn determination that reminded him painfully of Martha. The way we always should have been. 20 minutes later, they were mounted and riding hard toward the north. Ava sat her horse better than Liam had expected, though he could see the fever and exhaustion taking their toll. Harper rode between them on her paint mare, her face set with grim purpose that made her look far older than her years. The countryside rolled past in a blur of brown grass and scattered mesquite. The October sky stretched tight as drumhead above them. Liam pushed the pace as hard as he dared, knowing that every hour they delayed was another hour for Noah's enemies to find him first. Tell me about him. Harper called over the thunder of hooves. Tell me what he's like now. Ava glanced at Liam, then back at the girl riding with such fierce determination. He's taller than you now, I'd guess. Still has that cowlick at the back of his head that never wants to lie flat. He's quiet, more careful than he used to be, but he still has the kindest eyes I've ever seen. Does he still sing? Harper's voice was wistful. He used to sing to the horses when they were skittish. Every day? Old hymns mostly, but sometimes songs he makes up. He wrote one about Texas that always makes me cry. They rode in silence for a while, the horses breathing and the creak of leather the only sounds. Liam found himself cataloging details. The way Ava sat her saddle despite her obvious pain, the determined set of Harper's shoulders, the vast emptiness of the landscape around them. Somewhere ahead, his son was waiting. Somewhere behind, danger might be following. As the sun reached its zenith, they crested a hill and saw smoke rising in the distance. Too much smoke, too dark to be from cooking fires. That's coming from Millfield, Ava said, her face going pale. Liam pulled out his spyglass, sweeping it across the horizon until he found the town. What he saw made his blood run cold. Buildings burning, people running in the streets, and the distinctive shapes of men on horseback driving cattle and terrorizing civilians. Raiders, he said grimly, collapsing the spyglass. The town's under attack. Harper's face went white. Noah is still alive, Liam said firmly, though his own heart was hammering with fear. And we're going to keep him that way. He spurred his horse forward, Ava and Harper flanking him as they rode toward the smoke and chaos of Millfield. Behind them, dust clouds suggested they weren't the only ones heading toward the burning town. But as they drew closer to the flames, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that they were riding straight into a trap, and that somewhere in that hell of smoke and gunfire, his son was running for his life. The acrid smell of burning wood and terror filled their nostrils as they approached Millfield's outskirts. Liam held up his hand, signaling them to stop behind a ridge that overlooked the town. Through his spyglass, he could see the main street littered with overturned wagons and scattered belongings, while mounted raiders drove stolen cattle toward the hills. How many? Ava asked, her face pale but determined. 8, maybe 10 riders. But they're organized, not just random bandits. Liam's jaw tightened as he watched the systematic way they moved through the town. This was planned. Harper's mare danced nervously beneath her. Where would Noah be? Where would the Reverend hide him? The church sits on the far side of town, Ava said, pointing toward a white steeple barely visible through the smoke. Reverend Morrison has a root cellar beneath the altar. He said it was built during the Indian Wars. A gunshot cracked across the distance, followed by a woman's scream. Liam's hands tightened on his reins. Every instinct screamed at him to charge in with guns blazing, but he had Harper to think about now. And if Noah was really alive, he couldn't risk making his son an orphan for the second time. We go in quiet, he decided. Circle around to the church through the creek bed. Harper, you stay with the horses. No. His daughter's voice carried the same iron resolve he'd inherited from Martha. Noah won't come if he doesn't see me. He'll think it's another trick, another lie. Before Liam could argue, a new sound drifted across the wind, singing. Clear and sweet despite the chaos, a young voice raised in an old hymn that Martha used to hum while cooking supper. Harper's breath caught. That's him. That's Noah. Ava nodded, tears starting down her cheeks. He sings when he's frightened, says it helps him remember there's still beauty in the world. The song was coming from the direction of the church, which meant Noah was likely still hidden but alive. Relief flooded through Liam's chest, quickly followed by renewed urgency. If they could hear Noah singing, so could the raiders. Move, Liam commanded, spurring his horse down the backside of the ridge. They approached Millfield through a dry creek bed that wound behind the main buildings, the horse's hooves muffled by sand and scattered leaves. The singing grew stronger. As they neared the church, and Liam caught Harper wiping tears from her cheeks. "It's really him," she whispered. "I can feel him now." He's scared but trying to be brave. Liam had stopped questioning the mysterious connection between his twins. Some bonds ran deeper than death, stronger than time. They left the horses tied in a grove of cottonwoods 50 yards from the church. Liam checked his Winchester one final time, then looked at his small, determined companions. Ava had produced a derringer from somewhere in her skirts, while Harper clutched a hunting knife that looked too big for her small hands. "Remember," he said quietly, "we get Noah and get out. No heroics, no unnecessary risks." They approached the church from the rear, using headstones and monuments for cover. The white clapboard building seemed untouched by the chaos consuming the rest of town, but Liam could see bodies near the front steps, the Reverend and his wife, cut down while trying to protect their flock. Harper's intake of breath told him she'd seen them too. "The Reverend was kind to Noah," she said, her young voice heavy with grief and rage. "He didn't deserve this. None of them did." Liam's finger found the trigger of his rifle. "But we can't help the dead. We help the living." The church's rear door hung open, creaking in the wind. Through it, Noah's singing drifted clear and heartbreaking. "In the sweet by and by, we shall meet on that beautiful shore." Liam peered around the doorframe into the church's dim interior. Wooden pews sat undisturbed, afternoon sunlight streaming through stained glass windows to paint colored patterns on the floor. The altar at the front appeared normal, but Liam knew that somewhere beneath it, his son was hiding. That a shadow moved near the front of the church, a man in a long coat, gun drawn, systematically searching the pews. As Liam watched, the raider approached the altar and began examining the floorboards. "He's found the entrance," Ava breathed beside him. The singing stopped abruptly, replaced by muffled voices from beneath the floor. The raider knelt and began prying at something with his knife. Clearly having located the hidden cellar, Liam didn't hesitate. He stepped into the church, rifle raised. "Step away from there." The raider spun, his gun coming up fast, but Liam was faster. The Winchester cracked once, and the man crumpled beside the altar, his weapon clattering across the wooden floor. "Noah." Harper's voice rang through the church as she pushed past Liam. "Noah, it's me. It's Harper." A section of floor near the altar suddenly lifted, revealing a dark opening. A pale face appeared, older than Liam remembered, thinner, marked by experiences. No 12-year-old should endure, but unmistakably his son. Noah's eyes, the same dark brown as Harper's, went wide with disbelief. "Harper." The word came out cracked and uncertain. "But you're? I thought you were. I'm real." Harper was crying now, reaching toward the cellar opening. "We're all real. Papa's here too." Noah's gaze found Liam across the church, and for a moment, time stopped. 2 years of grief, fear, and desperate hope hung between them like smoke. Then Noah scrambled out of the cellar and ran. He was taller, as Ava had said, and too thin, with scars on his arms that spoke of harsh treatment. But when he threw himself into Liam's arms, he was still the same boy who'd once helped Harper chase chickens and sung lullabies to sick calves. "Papa," Noah sobbed against Liam's chest. "I tried to come home. I tried so many times, but they said you were dead, said there was nothing left. I'm here now." Liam's voice broke as he held his son close, breathing in the scent of his hair, feeling the solid reality of him after 2 years of haunting dreams. "I'm here, and I'm never letting you go again." Harper wrapped her arms around both of them, and for a moment, the Carter family was whole again. But the moment shattered as boots thundered on the church steps. Well," a rough voice drawled from the doorway. "Looks like we found our lost lamb after all." 3 more raiders stood silhouetted in the entrance, guns drawn. The leader, a scarred man with cold eyes, smiled without warmth. Been looking for you a long time, boy. Your old friends in Kansas are mighty eager to have you back. Noah pressed closer to Liam, his whole body trembling. They're the ones who took me before. They're the ones who gave you shelter and work when you had nothing. The scarred man interrupted. Now it's time to pay your debts. Liam's rifle was empty, and reaching for his pistol would take too long. Ava's Derringer held only 2 shots against 3 men. They were trapped, with nowhere to run and his children in the line of fire. But as the raiders advanced, something unexpected happened. Through the stained glass windows came the sound of approaching hooves. Many horses, riding hard. The scarred man's smile faltered as dust clouds appeared beyond the glass, and a new voice boomed across the churchyard. This is Sheriff Blake. Release those people and surrender your weapons. The scarred raider's confidence cracked like ice in spring thaw as Sheriff Blake's voice boomed again across the churchyard. You're surrounded. Come out with your hands visible. Through the stained glass windows, Liam could see at least a dozen mounted figures forming a perimeter around the church. The 3 raiders exchanged nervous glances, their earlier swagger evaporating like morning mist. This ain't over, the scarred man snarled, but his gun hand was shaking now. That boy belongs to people who paid good money for him. The only place that boy belongs is with his family, Liam said, standing slowly with Noah still pressed against his side. His son had grown quiet, but Liam could feel the tremors running through the 12-year-old's frame. Harper stepped forward, her young face blazing with protective fury. You hurt my brother. You made him think we were dead. Little girl, you don't understand the way the world. The church door exploded open as Sheriff Blake and 2 deputies burst in, guns drawn and ready. Ethan Blake was a big man with steady hands and eyes that missed nothing, the kind of lawman who'd brought order to more than one frontier town. Drop your weapons, Blake commanded, his voice carrying the authority of 20 years wearing a badge. Now, the raiders hesitated for a heartbeat too long. Blake's gun spoke once, and the scarred man's pistol went flying from his suddenly bloodied hand. The other 2 raiders threw down their weapons immediately, hands raised high. Smart choice, Blake said dryly, nodding to his deputies. Mia, Logan, get these men secured. We'll sort out the charges later. As the deputies moved to shackle the raiders, Blake's attention turned to the Carter family. His expression softened as he took in the emotional reunion still unfolding near the altar. Liam Carter. When Liam nodded, Blake continued, got word from Mrs. Patterson that you'd ridden out in a hurry with your daughter and a sick woman. When we saw the smoke over Millfield, he gestured toward Ava, who was leaning heavily against a pew. Ma'am, you look like you need a doctor. I'll be fine, Ava said, though her fever-bright eyes suggested otherwise. The important thing is that Noah's safe. Blake's gaze moved to the boy still clinging to Liam's side. This the son you buried 2 years back. Long story, Liam said, his hand protectively stroking Noah's hair. But yes, this is Noah, and he's coming home with us. Papa. Noah's voice was small, uncertain. What if they come back? What if there are others? Before Liam could answer, Harper took her twin's hands in hers. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, and Liam was reminded powerfully of how they communicated as small children, silent conversations that needed no words. You're safe now, Harper said finally. We're together again, and nobody's going to separate us. I won't let them. Promise. Noah's voice cracked on the word. Twins promise. Harper squeezed his hands. The kind we used to make. Something shifted in Noah's expression, a wall crumbling, hope finally daring to bloom. I dreamed about you every night. Even when they told me you were dead, I could still feel you here. He pressed a hand to his chest, like a warm light that never went out. Tears tracked down Harper's cheeks, but her smile was radiant. I felt you too. That's how I knew Miss Ava was telling the truth. Blake cleared his throat gently. Hate to interrupt, but we should get moving. There might be more of them, and that young lady needs medical attention. The ride back to the Carter Ranch took place under a sky painted gold and crimson by the setting sun. Noah rode double with Liam, his arms wrapped tight around his father's waist as if afraid he might disappear again. Harper kept her horse close beside them, reaching out periodically to touch her brother's arm, reassuring herself that he was real. Ava rode between 2 deputies, swaying slightly in her saddle but refusing offers to rest. She watched the reunited family with quiet satisfaction, her mission finally complete. Miss Ava, Noah called over the sound of hooves. What will you do now? Now that you don't have to take care of me anymore. She smiled, and for the first time since they'd met her, Liam saw it reach her eyes. I think I might stay in these parts for a while. Dusty Creek still needs a teacher, and I've grown rather fond of Texas. You could stay with us, Harper said. Immediately. Couldn't she, Papa? We have plenty of room, and Noah will need catching up on his lessons. Liam met Ava's gaze over the children's heads. Something passed between them. Understanding, possibility. The first fragile thread of something that might grow into more given time and nurturing. The offer stands, he said simply. For as long as you'd like. As they crested the final hill. Before home, the Carter Ranch spread out below them in the gathering dusk. Lamplight glowed warm in the windows, and smoke rose peacefully from the chimney. It looked exactly as it had that morning, but everything was different now. Noah straightened in the saddle, his eyes drinking in the sight of home. It's smaller than I remembered, he said wonderingly. But more beautiful too. Wait until you see the horses, Harper said excitedly. Thunder had a foal while you were gone. A little paint mare with the sweetest disposition. I've been training her, but I always hoped you might want to help. I'd like that. Noah's voice was stronger now, more sure. I'd like that very much. They dismounted in the ranch yard as Mrs. Patterson emerged from the house. Her flour-dusted apron a testament to the dinner she'd been preparing. Her eyes went wide as she saw Noah, then filled with tears. Lord have mercy, she breathed. It's a miracle. A pure miracle. That night, after the sheriff and his men had departed, after Ava had been settled in the guest room with willow bark, tea for her fever, after Noah had been fed and bathed and reassured a dozen times that he was truly home, the Carter family sat together on the front porch. The twins shared the old porch swing that had been silent for 2 years, their heads bent. Together as they whispered in the secret language they'd thought was lost forever. Liam sat in Martha's old chair, watching his children reclaim each other, feeling pieces of his heart he'd thought were broken beyond repair, slowly knitting back together. Papa, Noah looked up from his quiet conversation with Harper. Miss Ava told me about the grave, about the headstone with my name on it. We can change it, Liam said gently. Make it right. Noah shook his head. Timothy Walsh deserves to be remembered too. He was just a sick boy who needed burying proper. Maybe we could put both names on it, so people know someone cared about him. Liam's throat tightened with pride. Whatever horrors his son had endured, they hadn't broken his gentle heart. That's exactly what we'll do. Above them, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the fields, a meadowlark sang its liquid song. The Carter Ranch was whole again, its scattered pieces finally come home. Well, folks, that's the end of our tale. A story of love stronger than lies, hope brighter than despair, and family bonds that death itself couldn't break. If this story touched your heart like it did mine, hit that like button and tell me in the comments below where you're watching from today. Until next time, may your own scattered pieces find their way home.